The African sky was bathed in golden light as dawn spread across the vast savanna. The land seemed peaceful, but underneath that calm surface, something unexpected was preparing to shake the heart of the wild. Tall grass swayed gently in the warm breeze, and birds greeted the morning with vibrant songs. Yet deep inside the forest, the ordinary rhythm of life was about to break. Among the thick trees and scattered shadows of the rainforest, a seasoned ranger named John made his way through the trail. He had spent over a decade in this sanctuary. A sun had darkened his skin, but his spirit remained deeply connected to the animals he protected. John had witnessed many moments, rescues, survival, but nothing could prepare him for what he was about to experience. This morning was like any other. John was on his usual patrol, checking the borders for signs of danger. Poachers often left behind signs, tracks, traps, or silence where there should be sound. John knew the forest like an old friend. Every crack of a branch or rustle of a leaf had meaning to him. But today, something was different. As he moved past a thick wall of vines, a sound reached his ears. It was not a growl, not a roar, something softer. A weak, high-pitched cry, broken and desperate. It cut through the forest noise like a whisper in the middle of a storm. John froze. His senses sharpened. Years of experience told him this was not just another animal call. This was distress. He moved cautiously, stepping over roots and pushing aside heavy leaves. As he approached a narrow clearing, his heart clenched. At the base of an old tree, curled up in the dirt, was a tiny creature. Its black fur was thin and dull. Its small eyes, wide with fear, stared directly at him. A baby gorilla. It looked injured, but what struck John most was the sorrow in its gaze. Beside the little body was a broken wire snare. John's breath caught. This baby had escaped. A trap. But the absence of its mother spoke louder than any words could. John knelt slowly, speaking softly. His voice was low and calm, like the wind brushing against leaves. He extended his hand, not expecting trust, but offering peace. The baby gorilla trembled. It cried out again, weak, afraid. But it did not run. Minutes passed like hours. Slowly, the baby crawled closer, uncertain but curious. Its tiny hand reached out and touched John's fingers. In that moment, something unspoken passed between them. A fragile thread of trust had been formed. Without hesitation, John wrapped the small body in his arms. It was cold, shaking, yet alive. He checked it carefully. There were minor scratches, but no serious injuries. Relief swept over him. This little one had survived what many did not. Back at the ranger station, John and his team prepared a space for the gorilla. John named him Kofi, meaning born on Friday in a local language. Kofi began a new chapter under John's care. He was fed, given warmth, and slowly taught that he was safe. Days turned into weeks. Kofi's strength grew. His fur darkened too, a rich black. His eyes lost the fear and began to shine with curiosity. He would follow John around the station, climbing onto his back or tugging at his arm with playful energy. He became more than just a rescued animal. He became a companion. Every morning, Kofi waited at the door as John prepared for patrol. Often, the two would explore together. Kofi learned the sounds of the forest, just like John had. He could spot danger before John saw it. Sometimes he would climb trees to scan the distance, alert and sharp. He was no longer that helpless infant. He was becoming a guardian of the forest. 2.1 day. As a poacher's vehicle entered the edge of the sanctuary, Kofi let out a deep warning call. John followed his direction, intercepted the intruders, and saved a group of elephants that had been cornered. John knew from that moment on that Kofi was not only intelligent, he was brave. Their bond deepened with every passing season. John taught Kofi how to read gestures, understand basic signs, and survive in the wild. In return, Kofi gave John unwavering loyalty. It was not a typical ranger-animal relationship. It was something far deeper, something that blurred the lines. Between species. 5 years passed. Kofi had grown into a powerful adult gorilla. His muscles were strong, his instincts sharp, and his spirit gentle. Though he roamed freely near the sanctuary, he never strayed far from John. Their bond had become legend among the Hmong, staff an unbreakable friendship that defied logic. But on one scorching afternoon, the forest would test them both. Kofi arrived. At the station, unexpectedly. His face, usually calm, was filled with worry. He tugged at John's arm, urging him to follow. The urgency in his eyes was impossible to ignore. John stood up at once, grabbed his gear, and called his team. Something was wrong. Kofi moved quickly through the forest, pausing only to glance back and make sure John was following. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. John had never seen him like this before. This was not fear. This was purpose. The path Kofi followed was not familiar. They moved beyond the regular patrol zones, deeper into the untouched parts of the reserve. Vines twisted around ancient trees. Streams crossed their path, but Kofi did not slow down. He was leading John somewhere urgent. Behind them, 2 rangers followed silently, their tools packed. Tranquilizers, cutters, first aid. John had briefed them on the way, but even he did not know what to expect. The group pushed through a thick wall of bamboo. On the other side, sunlight poured into a hidden clearing, and there it was. A large male lion was hanging awkwardly from a fallen tree trunk. Its powerful hind leg was trapped in a snare that had dug deep into the flesh. Blood stained the dry leaves beneath it. The lion growled, a deep, sorrowful sound filled with pain and helplessness. John froze, his chest tightened. This was not just any lion. This was one of the sanctuary's dominant males. His golden mane shimmered even under layers of dust and blood. His eyes, sharp yet exhausted, locked onto John's. It was not a threat, it was a plea. Kofi stood beside John. For a moment, he did not move. Then he stepped forward slowly. He made a soft humming noise, a gentle sound John had only heard a few times before. Kofi was showing concern. His large frame moved with careful grace as he approached the suffering lion. John whispered to the team, "This is serious. We need to move fast, but we cannot startle him." The snare had twisted tightly, cutting circulation. Infection was already setting in. One wrong move, and the lion could panic, injuring himself further or harming the team. While one ranger prepared the tranquilizer, John spoke in a calm voice, keeping his tone low and steady. "We are here to help. Stay with us. You will be free soon." Kofi sat beside John, watching the lion without fear. It was a moment of silence, where predator and primate creatures who would never share space in the wild were connected through pain and empathy. The dark was ready. John stepped closer, slowly and carefully. With a steady hand, he aimed and fired. The dart struck the lion's shoulder. The animal flinched, but did not roar. His body relaxed slowly as the sedative took effect. His eyes began to close. Once the lion was unconscious, the rescue began. Every second counted. John pulled out the snare cutters. The wire had dug so deep it nearly touched the bone. His hands worked methodically. Each movement was delicate. One ranger held the leg in place, while another cleaned the blood around the wound. John cut through the first loop, then another. The wire loosened. Finally, after what felt like hours, the trap released its hold. John gently lowered the lion's leg to the ground. The wound was exposed, swollen, raw, and infected. "We need to treat this now," he said firmly. Kofi moved closer, his eyes fixed on the lion's face. He made a low sound again, this time softer. Then, to everyone's surprise, Kofi reached out and gently touched the lion's mane with his large fingers. It was not a show of dominance. It was comfort. John felt something shift in the air. He looked around. The forest had fallen completely silent. Even the birds had gone quiet, as if nature itself was watching. With the lion sedated, the team cleaned the wound, applied medicine, and bandaged the leg. They had done everything they could. In the field, it was time to move the lion to safety. Carefully, they lifted the heavy body onto a large canvas stretcher. It took all their strength to carry him across the forest floor. Kofi walked beside them the entire way, never leaving the lion's side. Back at the station, a special enclosure had been prepared. Soft hay lined the ground, water was ready, and shade protected him from the sun. The lion was placed gently inside. His breathing was steady. He was alive. Safe. John wiped the sweat from his forehead. His arms ached. But inside, he felt something greater, something beyond the pride of a successful rescue. He looked at Kofi, who was sitting quietly outside the enclosure, eyes locked on the resting lion. "Kofi," John whispered, "you saved him." The lion's breathing grew steady as the hours passed. He rested, his golden mane spread across the soft hay, one leg wrapped in clean bandages. The pain in his body was far from over, but he was no longer alone. John watched the lion carefully, noting every small movement. The swelling in the leg was serious, but it had not spread too far. The infection was under control for now. Time and care would decide the rest, but it was Kofi's behavior that left everyone speechless. The large gorilla had not returned to his usual routine. Instead, he stayed near the lion's enclosure, sitting on a wooden platform just outside the fence. He watched day and night. Sometimes he moved closer, holding on to the bars quietly, as if checking on a friend. John had never seen anything like it. He spoke to one of the rangers. "You notice how Kofi does not look at the lion like prey or like a threat? It is something else, like concern." The ranger nodded. "I think he understands what the lion went through." John kept a close eye on both animals. At first, he feared Kofi's presence might disturb the lion, especially when he regained consciousness. But when the lion opened his eyes the next morning, his reaction was calm. The lion blinked a few times, lifted his head slowly, and looked at the figure sitting near the fence. Kofi did not move. He just sat there, still and silent. The lion lowered his head again and closed his eyes. John could hardly believe what he saw. Over the next few days, Kofi's presence became a routine part of the lion's healing. Every morning, he brought something: branches, wild fruits, or smooth stones, and placed them near the enclosure. They were not treats the lion could eat, but they felt like offerings. Small gestures of goodwill. At first, the staff thought Kofi was just mimicking human behavior. But then something deeper became clear. He was trying to connect. Sometimes, the lion would raise his head and nudge the fence gently with his nose, as if acknowledging the gift. Other times, he simply watched as Kofi arranged the items before leaving quietly. It was not long before the staff stopped questioning it. Each animal had its own rhythm. The lion rested, healed, and slowly regained his strength. He began standing, then walking short steps, then testing his leg with cautious confidence. All the while, Kofi remained nearby. John decided not to interfere. "This is their moment," he said to his team. "We are just witnesses." He continued treating the lion, checking bandages, giving medicine, but always allowed Kofi to be part of the space. Sometimes, while John was cleaning the wound, Kofi would sit just behind him, as if supervising the care. One afternoon, as John was finishing the checkup, the lion leaned against the fence. Kofi reached forward, his massive hand stretching until it touched the lion's mane gently. No growl, came no reaction of fear or anger. Instead, the lion turned his head slightly, brushing his face against Kofi's fingers. It was a moment of trust one few humans ever witnessed between such powerful creatures. John sat back, speechless. Even in the world of wild survival, where instinct ruled and strength decided fate, this connection broke every law written by nature. Later, that night, John recorded the events in his field journal. I am witnessing something rare, something science does not fully explain. A gorilla rescued by a man has now rescued a lion. Not with tools, not with strength, but with empathy. Word began to spread across the sanctuary. Rangers from other regions came to see this rare sight, a black gorilla watching over a wounded lion, not as prey, not as threat, but as an equal. Cameras were kept away. John refused to allow media into the station. This was not a show. It was a sacred story still being written. Weeks passed. The lion grew stronger. His walk became steady. His roars returned short and low at first, then louder with every sunrise. But even as he healed, he never lost his calm behavior near Kofi. One morning, John opened the door to the enclosure slightly and stepped back. The lion could have bolted, but he did not. He stood at the edge, looked out at the trees, then turned to Kofi. The two stood inches apart, separated only by the open gate and the last step. Kofi stepped forward and touched the lion's leg once. More, and the lion leaned his head down. In silence, in perfect peace. John whispered, "They are ready." The sun rose gently across the canopy, casting warm light on the ranger station. The air was still, as if the entire forest was waiting for something important to happen. John stood in front of the lion's enclosure with Kofi beside him. Both were silent, both watching the lion who now stood tall and steady. His golden mane shimmered once again. The wound on his leg had healed beautifully. His strength had returned. John had been preparing for this day. He had spoken to the team, cleared the path back into the wilderness, and made sure every route was safe. It was time to let the lion return home. The gate was ready to open, but John hesitated for a moment, not because he feared the lion's release, but because he knew this story was more than just a rescue. It was a bond, one that had defied every natural boundary. He looked at Kofi, who was still holding on to the fence. "You did this," John whispered. "You brought him back." With a deep breath, John unlocked the gate and stepped back. The lion did not rush out. He stepped forward slowly, his paws pressing into the soft earth. He paused at the doorway, breathing in the fresh scent of the wild. His eyes scanned the horizon. Then he turned back. Kofi walked closer. They stood face to face. One last time. John and the rangers held their breath. The lion lowered his head slightly, as if bowing in quiet gratitude. Kofi extended his hand again, resting it on the lion's broad shoulder. Their connection, born of pain and healed by care, had reached its final moment. And then the lion let out a mighty roar. It echoed through the trees. It traveled across the hills. It reached even the deepest corners of the sanctuary. It was not a roar of anger. It was not fear. It was a message of survival, a cry of return, a sound that said, "I am alive, I am free, and I am not alone." The lion turned and walked into the forest. Step by step, strong and proud, he disappeared into the green, becoming part of the wild once more. Kofi stood still, watching until there was nothing left to see. Then he turned toward John. Their eyes met. No words were needed. They had both witnessed something few ever would. Not a miracle, not a myth, but a truth hidden deep inside the heart of the wild dot. As the forest embraced the lion once more, a calm silence followed. It was the kind of silence that came only after something sacred had taken place. Not every bond needs to be explained. Not every connection follows the rules of nature. Some stories simply happen, and they change everything. Kofi remained by the gate for a while longer, his large figure still, his face thoughtful. John stood beside him without saying a word. He did not need to. They had not just rescued a lion. They had proved that love, empathy, and loyalty were not limited to one species. They belonged to all living beings. The rules written by the wild had been rewritten not with force, but with compassion. In the following days, the sanctuary returned to its rhythm. Birds sang, streams flowed, and life continued. But something had shifted. A quiet respect spread among the rangers. Kofi had become more than just a survivor. He had become a symbol. Visitors and researchers heard whispers of the story, a black gorilla who helped save a wounded lion. But the tale was never told for fame. John kept the details close. What had happened was not for headlines or photographs. It belonged to the forest. Kofi went back to his daily life, but he was not the same Dot every now and then. He would stand on a hill, gazing toward the trees, where the lion had vanished. John often watched from a distance, knowing exactly what Kofi was thinking. And then one morning, the sound returned. A roar familiar and powerful echoed across the treetops. John looked up. Kofi stood tall, his chest rising proudly. The lion had returned, not in body, but in voice. He was alive. He remembered. That roar was not just a farewell, it was a promise. A reminder that bonds built from kindness can last beyond fear, beyond time, beyond instinct. In the heart of the African sanctuary, one story would live forever, the story of a gorilla who remembered what it meant to be rescued, and chose to rescue in return. John continued his mission, patrolling the borders, stopping the poachers, protecting the wild. And Kofi, his silent companion, remained always by his side. Together, they had rewritten the rules of the wild, not with weapons, not with strength, but with something far more powerful. Compassion. If this story touched your heart, then share it with someone who needs to be reminded of the beauty that still exists in this world. Like the video, share the message, and subscribe for more powerful stories that reveal the soul of nature and the truth about what connects us all. Because sometimes, even in the deepest wild, the most unexpected friendships can change everything. Thank you for watching.